Good morning, Walton friends and family. I'm Rachel Hawes, and it's an honour and a privilege to be asked to tell you a few small snippets of my Walton story. It was a warm Friday evening in July 1984. Leon and I were here at the church with our 3 teenage girls for Jim's induction and welcome to Walton. I was holding Sam and Joan Spare's newest baby, Denise. Jack Treble raised his eyebrows at me. I said, "It shows how long it is since you've been to church." At which he burst out laughing, but I'm not sure that Jack trusted me after that. Later that evening, while driving up Highway 400, we were treated to a wonderful show of the Northern Lights, and I thought, this new minister, who is so different from Reverend Vic Wilkinson, is going to work out just fine. Got to trust God and the Walton Search Committee. Was I right? Yes. And trust has played a major role since we started attending Walton in 1972, seeking baptism for our first child. We trusted our church family. Our 3 girls were all baptized by Vic Wilkinson and then frequently visited him in his office downstairs between the furnace room and Bethel Hall while I was preparing for or cleaning up from the 3 to 5-year-old Sunday school classes. No wonder, Vic always had treats for them. I also remember Irma Chalmers, while holding our youngest, who was being passed from arm to arm as usual, saying that she was the church's baby and that we just looked after her through the week. We trusted the congregation's teenagers to babysit our family. Laurie Elford, Anne Bean, Carolyn Dagenhart, Judy and Jill Losborn, and Greg Hancock, possibly their favourite. Also, Lynn Scarrow, possibly Leon's favourite, as he said he could have a really decent conversation with her while driving her home to Rivers Bend Lane. Likewise, Walton families later trusted our girls to babysit their precious little ones, starting with the Spares girls, the Deweys, and others around Victoria and Mississauga streets, and sometimes, such as on Christmas Eve, Jamia and Andrea Gill. When Leon would do the readings at the carol services, he trusted Reverend Helgi Hongisto to coach him as to the meaning of a passage, when to pause, and what to emphasize, Helgi, of course, being a Bible scholar and an English professor and talented poet, as well as a very valued choir member. A mentor for me was Irene Bumby, from whom I eventually took over as Sunday school superintendent. But that was after she'd come to my rescue big time. When Irene saw a need, which was often, she took on a project, she invested 110% of herself in it. Our girls were to be bridesmaids, but one made-to-measure red velvet dress was way too tight and uncomfortable under the arms, and I was ill and bedridden at the time. When Irene found out, she came over and snipped and stitched 2 diamond-shaped red velvet gussets under the arms that made the garment fit comfortably for a wriggly 3-year-old. Dick and Helen Smith were also generous with their time and friendship, including invitations to Christmas dinners, and that was especially appreciated the year I was sick on Christmas Day. Back then, Sunday school had several classes in each of Bethel, Bronte, and youth halls. Dedicated teachers, including Mark Withnell and the Snare Girls, prepared their own weekly lessons from a prescribed curriculum and rarely got up to hear a full service, though we did try for some to get up occasionally for communion. We were truly fortunate to have such a dedicated team. It was years after the fact when Brenda Vardy told me that on her family's first day at Walton, she was surprised when her kids were whisked away to the Legion for Sunday school. Due to an ongoing reno, she just trusted that they'd come back safely. Being able to have trust in one's church family for support is a comfort and a blessing for all. Then, as now, good times, great memories. And I have Marg Withnell's lemon square recipe.
I'm Mike Tipping, and I'm happy and proud to say that I am the fourth generation of my family to be a member of Walton United Church. In fact, my great-grandparents on my mother's side, J.S. Flummerfelt, and also my grandparents, A.O. Flummerfelt, were members here before this actual church building was built in 1914. As I look around, I have some reminders of my family's past. The chancel cross, given in memory of my the chancel cross given in memory of my grandfather and my great-grandfather, and the plaque on the side wall over there, given by their great-nephew and grandson, Roger Flummerfelt, are just a couple of the visual signs. Also, I remember the choir loft, redesigned after the removal of the pipes and the pipe organ, which my great-grandmother played, and where my grandfather and great-grandfather Flummerfelt directed the choir for over 40 years. I also recall the tiny basement kitchen below the choir loft, where my grandmother Lila for years prepared communion. And after the service, she would phone to ask me to help her wash these glasses. There was a lot. The ladies were more than happy when the new addition was added in 1963, which gave them a big brand new kitchen. In addition, later was the Allen entrance given out here in memory of Eula Allen, plus it gave us extra room in Bronte Hall with a stage, offices, and storage space. However, I was in my teens when I first became an active member of the church. At that time, in the 50s, there was a lack of accessible activities for youth here in Bronte. Reverend Bill Sherwin, then minister here at Walton, saw the need to involve the teenagers to keep us out of trouble. I'm not going any further on that. He gathered us in the old church basement below where we're all sitting now. Once a week, we met, roughly 12 to 15 of us. As well as learning some Bible lessons and religious teachings, he involved us in the attempt to become responsible and caring kids by having fun and broadening our horizons. After getting to know each other, apart from the school bus to our new Thomas A. Blakelock High School, we enjoyed going to church camps at Port Ryerson on Lake Erie, and also Cedar Glen Camp in Bolton. We participated in the Halton Presbytery Drama Festival with Bill Hall as our director and joined the choir in musical presentations. Bill Hall was the husband of Frida Hall, who is still a member here of this church. We also went skating, tobogganing, and hayrides in Lowville. There were no movie nights or video games in those days. Reverend Sherwin also arranged for us to interact with other nearby United Church young peoples, and later we joined to play softball in friendly competition with them. Jack Hardiman, who you may remember as the roofer who roofed the new 1963 edition over here, and his wife Mildred supervised our mixed team of various skills. I was a pitcher mostly, but though competitive, we aimed to have fun. We played Appleby United Church, Lowville, Strabane, Millgrove, and Carlisle United Church Young People's Groups. It was the beginning of friendships, some of which have lasted over 60 years, as evidenced by the marriages of at least 5 couples that I can think of at this moment. Some names of the kids we hung out with at that time included Mary Jane Allen. She was the daughter of the famous Allen's Drugstore, which was right over here at the corner. Mike Milligan, Ian Carter, Beth Knott, the Livingston brothers, Kenny and Bobby, Art Ramsey, Bobby Hopkins, son of our Centriller Public School principal, and Susan Pickard Osborne, a second cousin of mine sitting right here. As a result of our young peoples and our Uncle Al, I met a girl who I finally won over. 5 years later, Ina and I were married at this very altar by Reverend Dick Bonsteel, a dearly loved minister. Years later, our 3 sons, Scott, Grant, and Jay, and 2 of our grandsons were baptized here. This last July, Ina and I celebrated our 60th anniversary in Bronte Hall, where 60 years ago we had held the reception after our wedding. The meal cooked and served to over 75 people by the UCW. Such happy memories, and also many sad occasions too, as we have lost loved ones and other steadfast members of this congregation. Throughout, Walton has been here for us and will be for its future members. Cherish your memories, your family and friends. They are with you for life. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Susan Osborne. What is currently known as Walton Memorial United Church was first recorded in a proposal for a Sabbath school at a meeting held at the schoolhouse on West Street on May 12, 1845. The original white wooden Methodist Episcopal Church was built on this site in 1850 on land set apart for the Credit Mississauga tribe. The Ladies' Aid was organized in October 1913. At the bazaar in November, they raised $63.06 to buy cooking utensils and dishes. The congregation met in the wooden church for the last time on December 31st, 1913. Mrs. Emanuel Walton, wife of a local farmer, presented a gold key to Reverend Thomas Boyd to open the new church. The same gold key is on display today. Prosperous Walton brothers from Hamilton and Toronto paid all the expenses, and the church members were never informed of the cost. The men of the congregation gave freely of their labor. Mr. Dalt MacDonald did a great deal of the carpentry work. The church was officially opened on January 4th, 1914. On January 21st, 1919, the Women's Missionary Society was organized. A lye pipe organ was purchased the same year at a cost of $1,264.49. Mrs. J.S. Flummerfelt, my great-grandmother, continued as organist, assisted by her daughter, Mrs. A.E. Pickard, my grandmother. In the 1920s, the Carry On class was organized. Annually, they held a cotton carnival. Items made from sugar sacks were offered for sale. The United Church was inaugurated on June 10, 1925. The Methodist, the Congregational Union, and 70% of the Presbyterian Church in Canada became a union. The Ladies' Aid was renamed the Women's Association. In the 40s and 50s, inside the church were 2 wooden staircases that led to the basement from upstairs. The rear staircase on the northeast no longer exists. The front staircase, now hidden in a wall, was located at the bell tower entrance and is still visible in the blower room. The current nursery school entrance led directly from outside. My earliest memory of that hall was mission band, led by Irma Chalmers. Next was Sunday school, when the teachers pulled down the wooden slatted doors to form classrooms. Some of those slatted doors still exist in Bronte Hall. As teens, my cousin Linda and I were leaders of the Explorers. Our young people's group and confirmation instruction were led by Reverend Sherwin there. Sometimes choir practice was held. My younger sister attended Messengers. The original kitchen beneath where we're seated today was still in use. Delicious potluck dinners were served, teas, bazaars, and wedding receptions were held. During that same era, the sanctuary was the same as the original. The brass pipes for the organ were still in use. On Birds and Bees Sunday, we heard caged canaries singing amid the fragrance of spring blooms. When the village fire alarm sounded, located across the street where the cenotaph is located today, the volunteers raced out of the service. Evening Christmas services were lit with candles. Bronte Public School, situated where El Sparrow is located today, held concerts with special lighting arranged by Mr. Fairbrother. We enjoyed Sunday school picnics. Junior and senior choir members performed together. At that time, Walton was still a 2-point charge with Palermo United. My guess is 1957 as the year that the front of the sanctuary was remodeled and the pipe organ removed. June 16, 1963 was the official date of the dedication for the Christian Education Edition. However, the hall was in use in 1962. I attended a meeting wherein the Women's Association and the Carry On Club were disbanded and combined into the United Church Women. Some memories of the next 20 years include our marriage and reception, our children's baptisms and confirmations, quilting, marathon bridge, UCW member and president, Sunday school teacher, explorer leader, bazaar convener, member of the property committee, visitation team, nursery team, transporting seniors, presbytery rep, ad hoc committee, and chairperson of ministry and personnel. I would like to thank Patty Smart-Laird from the Bronte Historical Society. I would like to thank all the members of this congregation who contributed to my spiritual growth, and acknowledge a few of the women who served as mentors and role models, namely Jean Whiteman, Helen Smith, Merle Treble, and Shirley Scarrow. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Joyce, the daughter of Jim and Anna Joyce. Thank you for inviting me to speak this morning as we celebrate this milestone anniversary. I'm going to share some reflection of the Joyce family and their history with Walton Church. My dad, Jim Joyce, until his death this past October, was the oldest, longest, continuous member of this church. Dad would have been 90 this year. Dad is here in spirit, and I'm certain he's smiling down on everyone here today. My paternal grandparents, Percival and Olive, affectionately known as Percy and Ollie, were married here when it was a Methodist parsonage on December 27, 1923, by Reverend G.A. Moore. Dad was baptized here, when my mom was recently sorting through family photos, she found Dad's cradle roll certificate dated June 1937, certifying Dad as a member of the cradle roll department of the United Church Sunday School of Brawny. Dad was 2. The superintendent at the time was Mrs. J.A. Clements, and the minister was the Reverend H.S. Fittis. As of 2025, 5 generations of the Joyce family are connected to Walton Church. If Dad was speaking today, he would be reminiscing with great fondness and amazement of all the changes that had happened here over his lifetime. Dad talked about the meetings, the discussions, the debates that occurred at the church, especially when major decisions were being made. Decisions like the selling of the old manse on Brawny Road and the building of the current manse on Hickson Street. Similarly, the discussions that occurred when the congregation decided to remove the pipe organ from the sanctuary and purchase the new modern organ. For myself, in my 60-plus years, I too have seen many changes. The building of Brawny Hall, the new youth hall, the offices being moved from the bowels of the church to the upper level, student intern, parish nurse ministries, kitchen updates, accessibility projects, and landscaping around the church property, just to name a few. These improvements all strengthen the life and ministry here, and they happen because of the visioning, financial support, faith of both past and present congregational members. Fellowship and participation in the church has always been important to Mom and Dad. Dad often peeled potatoes for the annual turkey dinner or gave a hand with many odd jobs around the church. Mom is a lifetime member of the UCW and at 91 still knits for Walton's outreach ministry. Although Mom doesn't attend church now, she faithfully watches the service each week virtually. Hi, Mom. And lastly, I'd like to share a story that happened at a Walton family camping weekend many years ago. Many families participated: trebles, scarrels, withnells, postmas, bumbies, just to name a few. Our family of 5 kids under 10, Mom and Dad, jam-packed in our station wagon with our camping gear and supplies, landed at the camping sites. Tents were set up. Ours was an old-fashioned army tent. It was heavy and brutal to set up, but Mom and Dad got the tent set up, and Dad had to return to Brawny that evening, leaving us with Mom and all our church families. After a wonderful campfire and everyone was tucked in the tents for the night, the winds picked up. There was a torrential rainstorm and lightning storm. Part of our tent fell down, water was pouring in, sleeping bags were wet, kids were crying, I'm told. It was just a little bit of chaos for my mom. But our church families came to our rescue, and we kids were taken into back seats of the cars to keep warm, safe, and dry for the night. The next day, Dad got to hear about our adventure, and Dad loved to retell this story, and he'd smile and say he could always count on his church family. Mom and Dad met many special people here at Walton, and many have become lifelong friends. Dad was proud of the Joyce heritage associated with Walton, and Mom and all of us Joyces continue to honor and cherish Walton's part of our family history.
Good morning. My name is Karen Chalmers, and I've been connected to Walton Church my whole life, either directly
or indirectly through my parents, Irma and Alec Chalmers, who moved to Bronte shortly after they were married in 1940. Both were very active in the church over their lives. My dad was the administrator of the envelopes. He treated the process with great care. After he died, when my sister Catherine and I were clearing out the house, we found boxes and boxes and boxes of canceled envelopes stored by year. Given his fastidious care, we felt obliged to check every single envelope to make sure he had not missed a donation. It took us a while. Had we found any, which we did not, we knew that he would have expected us to pass along the coin or bill to the church. His other talent was peeling potatoes for the turkey dinner. One year, his fellow spudders presented him with a large potato painted gold, with a hole in the top and a rope around it. They put it around his neck and crowned him King of the Spuds. Our mother was also active in the church. The quilting group, the mission band, which for some reason in our house we called the baby band. Well, I guess they would be toddlers and preschoolers, got these little boxes to put their pennies in to contribute to the mission services overseas. And my sister Catherine used it at family events, go around with her little box soliciting pennies from relatives. Mother was also very involved with UCW and the cookie walk. She made the required 12 dozen cookies each year. She was also a member of the Carry On Club. My understanding is that this group was formed by several young women when they had aged out of the Sunday school, and they decided to carry on. Catherine and I used to gently tease her about what kind of carrying on she'd got up to when she came home from the meetings. My experience with Walton included Sunday school, helping a Sunday school teacher during my teen years, junior choir, and confirmation. The highlight of the Sunday school year for me was the annual picnic held at Hidden Valley Park. There were picnic tables laden with food, in Walton tradition, races, and other fun activities for us. Each year, all of the kids were given a giant piece of watermelon. This was a real treat. I had never tasted watermelon before that first time, and I look forward to this treat each year. Once in high school, I attended the Young People's Group, which was held jointly with the Presbyterian Church located on the third line. Now, this then greatly increased the pool of boys that were available at Young People's. I have a very vivid memory of a field trip we took when I was about 13 or 14. We visited a synagogue in Toronto. In preparing for this talk, I think the synagogue must have been Holy Blossom Temple. This trip was significant for a lot of reasons. I had not been on any previous field trips in public school. We didn't have those. I remember the temple being very bright and spacious. The canopy was novel to me. Of course, I could not follow the service, but I was struck with the knowledge that the people sitting in the pews with us were connected to the Old Testament. Thinking of this link somehow made the Bible more real to me. Up until then, my experiences with kind of other places had only been through books. The lasting impression I had was that there was a big world out there, and I knew, even as a young teen, that I wanted to be part of it. I think my time is about up. I would like to conclude that Walton was a wonderful place to grow up in, and now that I'm at the other end of the age spectrum, I'm finding it is a wonderful place to grow old in. Thank you, Walton.
Our anniversary litany and prayer. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for drawing us to community in this church that has been a place called home for so many. Inspire us with the lives of those before us, those ancient ones who have lived here in faith and opened up and given away your love to all who needed it. May you change us with a vision to continue here as a constant presence for those who travel through life, a community of welcome that cares for all our church, believing into what is still yet to be. Teach us to discern your voice as those before us has discerned your voice, guided by its call, feeding on its promise of life and hope and belonging. May we hear your word, a comforting word in its familiar sound, yet a disturbing word in what it speaks anew and longs for us to become. Hold us within the faith of your forebears, those who chose to meet you here in Walton, who recognize this place as a trusting place where your miracle of grace abides. May we be moved by that grace into all the places that make up our community, sharing what you have given abundantly like an ever-flowing stream. Call us from our past through the voices of our ancestors, in the songs they have sung and the prayers they have spoken that have shaped peace within this church. And may we join our voice with their voice in that one great song of love that will be lived and celebrated yet throughout this congregation. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Marie McLeod, and I've been a member of this church since the day I was born. And I won't tell you what day that was. How many of you remember Walton from the 50s? I don't have the history that a lot of these speakers had. My parents moved here from Prince Edward Island in 1947, and I was born here. So it was after 47. Anyway, I don't have the history, but I'll just read what I wrote. So anyway, how many of you do remember the 50s? Let's see, I can't be the only one. Okay, when we were kids, Sunday mornings, we would hear the first bell from Walton. We would run from home to church before the second bell. We were, of course, dressed in our Sunday best, because that's how people dressed for church. Ladies wore dresses. They wore hats. They usually wore gloves. I left mine on the pew. Our classes were in the lower level, below the church, in the rooms divided by the rolling doors. As we got older, when we became seniors, we moved to the, I'm not very good at this today. We spent the first part, as we became seniors, we spent the first part of the service in the church seated in the balcony. Our classroom had moved. All the junior kids were downstairs and the seniors moved upstairs. And our classroom was moved to the bell tower. That was quite a coup for us. We thought it was great. Having our classroom in the bell tower was one of those unforgettable things. It couldn't get any better for us. Just like today, there was a lot of activity at Walton. I'm just going to relate a couple of things that were simply unforgettable. First thing, the annual church picnic. Of course, it was potluck, and it was held at Hidden Valley Park. The picnic tables were placed end to end and set just like Sunday dinner. The kids had their own table, and the adults sat at the big table. I know this doesn't sound any different than any church picnic today. We had all the games and the races, the three-legged race, the sack race, and all the games. The difference was in the way we arrived at the park. We all met at the church, and there was a large farm truck in the parking lot with wood slat sides. That was the kids' transportation. We all piled into the back of the truck, shoulder to shoulder, just bouncing over the rough road, laughing, screaming with laughter all the way. It was just fantastic. We loved it. That was the last time we were allowed to go in the back of the truck. Laws changed. We would likely be arrested if we tried to do it today. Then there was a Christmas pageant that I remember very well. The school was planning a Christmas pageant, and there was no gym in the school. And the best venue would be Walton, and it was. This was the best Christmas pageant I had ever seen. At the time, I believe it was Mr. Flummerfelt who was our custodian. And he was in the balcony, and he created the perfect ambiance. He had spotlights of different colors shining down on the scene below. The whole pageant was breathtaking, and it was because of the fabulous lighting that he created. It was unforgettable. That's just one example of how the church and the school worked together. The time had come for us to leave Centriller behind and move on to high school. It was our grade 8 graduation. A celebration was planned for the graduates, and once again, the event would take place where? At Walton. There were speeches from delegates and awards to students. I don't remember all of the awards, but I do remember one very important one. It was for Citizen of the Year. It went to my very best friend, Sally Brown. You would have known her as Sally Hunter. She sang with us in the chancel choir. These are just a few stories to show how Walton once again was connected to the school and the church, and they worked together. Walton is engaged with everyone in the community. That tells of Walton's openness to everyone. Our doors are still open. You need only show up and come on in. All are welcome.
I just have to say, my younger daughter, who has a way with words in a very quiet, succinct way, said, "I know these photos are old because Papa is wearing hair." She also said, "You look the same in these pictures, Mummy, as you do now. So may the 4th be with me."
Our last speaker this morning is going to be Linda.
What do you mean, 2 minutes? Good morning. I'd like to spend just a few minutes to tell you about my life here at Walton, which started in 1954 when my parents moved from Port Credit to Trafalgar Street, which is now called Bronte Road, with a young baby in tow. Throughout all that time, from infancy to a well-marinated senior and grandmother, Walton has been my spiritual and musical home, and the Walton community has been my extended family. I joined the junior choir here when I was 6 years old. At that time, Mrs. Bonsteel was the choir director, and her children sang in the choir with us. And Mrs. Wood, Joan Gilbert's mom, was the organist and the senior choir director. The dress code was a little different back then. Mrs. Wood always wore a very special organist's hat, Marie will remember. And the choir members wore these dark maroon gowns with little mortarboard hats as well. When I was 13, Mrs. Wood asked me to sing with the senior choir in the tenor section to help them out. I don't recall that there was a youth choir at that time. I do remember starting to sing trios with Pam and Joan Gilbert, and Mrs. Wood would often give us a piece of music in three-part harmony the morning of the service and ask us to sing it for the service, and we'd have like one run-through. So it was a really stressful way to learn how to sight sing. Around that time, I remember often hearing a big thud in the service. Some of you know what that is. Mrs. Wood's husband, who was also in the choir, Len, he had an artificial leg, and because of World War I believe, and he would let his leg down with a loud thump. I think it was some sort of commentary maybe on the sermon. But I think it was also his way of just putting his foot down. When I was a teenager, I was part of a group of singers that sang for the shut-ins, and we traveled to their homes with treats and songs, and we always ended up at the Glendenning's house for hot apple cider. During my teenage years, I would often accompany myself on the guitar for any time I was doing a solo. However, this choice of instrument was thought by some in this church to be inappropriate for a church service. What can I say? I was going through a hippie phase, and guitar was my instrument of choice. Walton was a hub of activity when I grew up, not only for our congregation, but for the whole Bronte community. I belonged to two united church groups, the Explorers and the CGIT, Canadian Girls in Training. I have no idea what we were training for, but that's what it was called. Our leader was Sue Bumby, who was also our dance teacher on Saturday mornings in the church basement. So we literally were here every day of the week. Many Bronte friends from other area churches also attended these groups, and I have particularly fond memory of all of the Explorer group sitting in the balcony in the front row watching Sue get married. My parents were very involved in all aspects of Walton from the moment they arrived in Bronte. I grew up with all the ladies of the UCW and the Carry On group, since the meetings were often held at our house. I made sure to interact with the group because there was always lots of sweet treats to be had. Mom remained president of the UCW for many years until 2016. While I was still very young, my parents were part of a Walton singing group that sang and did skits. I think Michael was part of that, so was Ina. My dad was the piano accompanist, and they often traveled to other churches out of town to put on these shows. My dad would also play before the turkey dinners and many other times in the services. And my fondest memory was remembering when he accompanied Jennifer as she was playing the flute. So university came, and I went to McMaster, but I still drove home on the weekends to sing in the choir. And when I say I drove home, what I mean is I was driven home by John, because I hadn't learned how to drive yet. About this time, Canon Richardson, you may recall from the Church of the Epiphany, he showed up with 2 boxes of his late sister's very old organ music. I remember saying to my parents, what am I going to do with organ music? I don't plan on ever being a church organist. Well, that's true. I became a school teacher first. Regardless, they stored the music for me, maybe a premonition. I'm so glad they did, because I still use that music today. In fact, the postlude that I chose for today is played from one of her books, and this was printed in 1899. In 1976, John and I were married here at Walton by Reverend Wilkinson. Reverend Wilkinson's wife had a habit, and maybe a very useful habit. She always sat in the back row. She would cough when she thought it was time to end the sermon. You remember, right? In September 1981, Reverend Wilkinson called me the morning of choir practice to say that the current music director, who had just been hired 2 weeks prior, had already quit. And would I be able to fill in for choir rehearsal? My immediate response was, I don't play the organ. To which he replied, but you have so much singing experience. Well, long story short, I went to fill in that week, and here I am, almost 44 years later, I'm still filling in. I'm still filling in for a job I never applied for, okay? Yeah. When I started, there were 11 choir members, including Reverend Wilkinson, who sang tenor. There was only a senior choir and no youth or junior choir, but soon after I started a junior choir, which eventually was split into a junior choir and a youth choir. And in its heyday, the youth choir alone had 28 singers. Robin was one of my singers. The chancel choir, as the senior choir is now known, has grown to 45 talented and dedicated members. And over the years, we've been involved in many interesting and exciting things together. In the 1990s, many youth and adult choir members were part of the Walton Family Chorus, and we sang backup on 2 Juno-nominated recordings of the children's entertainer Eric Negler. Also at that time, both choirs won multiple first-place awards at local music festivals, and the chancel choir was invited to be the official choir of the Toronto Royal Winters Fair. Every year since the mid-'80s, the choir has performed fundraising and variety shows, comedy shows, concerts. Speaking of which, we have a show on the 25th of May, so I hope you'll all be here, an evening with Rogers and Hammerstein. Our latest musical adventure was appearing as musical guests on the Zoomer Holiday TV special in December 2023 with Marilyn Lightstone. As I mentioned, the Walton community is my extended family, not just for me, but for all of my family. All our 4 children were baptized and confirmed at Walton, and all of them sang in the kids' choirs. Our 5 grandchildren were also baptized at Walton, and one currently sings in the junior choir. Our 2 eldest children were both married here as well. Family and music have always been the most important things in my life, and I feel so blessed that Walton has been and will continue to be an integral part of both. Thanks for keeping me on.